This budget story is gigantic in West Virginia. It's going to be gigantic for a couple of months. Mitch Carmichael is the Senate president. He joins me on Metro News Talkline. Mitch, good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Hoppy. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you very much. Mitch, my understanding is that, at least I'm getting the drift, that Governor Justice, Chief of Staff Nick Casey, are at least giving very, very serious consideration to deep cuts in the budget to try to balance the budget for the next fiscal year. I'm talking about several $100 million. A, do you believe that they are in fact doing that? And B, if they do that, are you, as leader of the Senate, willing to step up and say, I'm with you, let's go deep?
Yes and yes. I believe that they are absolutely considering that. How could you not and be a responsible chief executive when you're $500 to $600 million in the hole? I mean, it's unsustainable, Hoppy. Any family situation that you would look at that kind of a budget deficit on a relative scale would say, I have to make changes to my expenditure patterns. And so I've had enough meetings with the governor and to know that he is absolutely, as he said during his campaign, considering all the elements that are necessary to balance the state budget, of which primary among those is bringing our expenditures in line with our current revenue stream.
Now, Mitch,
now,
Senator,
let me just add
go ahead. Sure.
Also is yes, this Senate will stand with him on the difficult decisions.
Now, Senator, we don't know yet what those cuts will be. Let's presume that you're correct and that I'm correct, and that in fact they're going to come to the table with some really big time budget cuts. And if you're going to do that, you're talking about, I'm spitballing here, probably reducing the commitment, reducing the amount of money that goes to higher education. You're talking about maybe even closing a college or two. You're talking about maybe reducing some of the social service benefits. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Maybe eliminating entire departments of the state. This is where, Mitch, and you know this, people start to get weak-kneed. Mm-hmm. And they'll start to say, now, I'm with you, Mitch, but daggone it, that college is in my district. But, I got WVUs in my district. What happens then?
Yeah, well, Hoppy, you're absolutely right. And previous legislators and previous government officials have written checks that they didn't have to cash, and they laid on future generations of West Virginians. And those horrible promises and that irresponsible behavior has come home to roost now in this legislature. And what I would say is we're going to be strong. We're going to do the things that you have to do to bring the revenue or our expenditures in line with our revenue. Hoppy, we cannot continue this path of just making everyone happy and putting it off on future generations. That the time for that kind of behavior is gone, and this is a responsible chief executive, and it's a responsible legislature that's going to make the tough cuts and bring our expenditures in line with our revenue. And also, though, what I would say to the people of West Virginia is, yes, these are difficult decisions in the here and now. I mean, look at Huntington, look at some of these other cities that have just not made the tough choices, and now they're faced with it. We're not going to put our people and our future generations and our children in that position. We also want to reform the tax structure in West Virginia in a manner that gets us away from this boom-bust cycle, and we fundamentally put a growth pattern in place in West Virginia. Hoppy, if we had jobs and opportunity in our state, these budget problems would go away.
You're right.
And you know that as well, better than anybody, that we have fewer people working in West Virginia than any other state in the nation, eligible age people to work. And we can put a tax structure in place that incents job creation in the private sector that solves all these problems. And so that's what we're going to do.
Senator, Mitch Carmichael is with us, the Senate president, and I wrote today, I thought it was very colorful language. One thing I really like about Jim Justice is the way he speaks. And when he talks about the potential of West Virginia, he gets all excited, and there's some hyperbole in there. And why can't we can do better? My goodness! And who wants to go to Michigan? Why don't you travel here? But when he talks about also our challenges, he's equally as earthy. I mean, he spoke before the Beckley, Raleigh County Chamber of Commerce, and he said about the state's finances, I quote, "We have a patient laying here," and he's talking about the state of West Virginia, the budget. "We have a patient laying there, and blood is shooting to the ceiling. All in the world we can do is trim the toenails. Blood is shooting to the ceiling. We've got to do something." I mean, you probably saw the comment. What did you think when you read that?
I have the article in front of me, as a matter of fact, and he and I have spoken about this. And from a metaphorical perspective, he's right. This state of West Virginia is bleeding, and our economy is in shambles. And it is time to enact fundamental life-saving measures. And to do that, we've got to, stop the bleeding. And that is our all these expenditures that we have. We have to cut it back, Hoppy. We have to cut state government.
Is it a fair assumption that, because again, I don't want to get too far ahead here, but I do get the impression in talking with the justice folks that they are serious about cuts, and I know we talk about that endlessly. And then but I'm talking about real cuts. I'm talking about $300 million, maybe $400 million, whatever it is, where you're not talking about a little trimming around the edges. You're talking about major reductions. I get the impression they are willing to do that.
I do too. I do too. I've had the conversations with them, and what I've said to the governor is that we will stand with you on those things. We're not going to be a legislature that says you get out in front on this, and and we're not there with you. We know that these cuts have to be made, and at every level of this government, in many of the municipalities in our state have just made promises they can't keep. They have put deceit on the people of West Virginia by making these promises that they can't cash, and have put it on our children. Nothing is more morally reprehensible than to make promises in the here and now that your children have to have the burden of that financial obligation on them, and it's unsustainable. We cannot do it. This is about the survival of our society in West Virginia. And you want to talk about hyperbole. I didn't put it in the terms of, bleeding patients.
Of blood shooting to the ceiling.
Yeah, blood shooting to the ceiling. But the truth is, it is unsustainable, Hoppy, and we have to make these cuts. Now, what I would say also is that there are, he may not be able to get to $500 million in cuts. That is a long shot. So you may still have to dip into the rainy day fund.
Sure.
But inherent in all those decisions is a fundamental restructuring of our tax code that I want to generate within the people of West Virginia an enormous enthusiasm for that, because that can change our long-term structure and the manner in which we tax our people. We have to get us on a pro-growth perspective, and that's been the problem. We're the only state in the nation that's lost population over the last 50 years, and it's because of this tax structure and other problems that we
other things
are fundamentally addressing.
I'd say naturally we'll have you back and talk about the tax issue. I had Senator Carnes on earlier this week about that, so I do want to dig down on that as well.
It's a very important issue.
Senator Mitch Carmichael, the Senate President. Mitch, always a pleasure. Thank you for your time.